world. However, we know that ultimately Christ and his people will be the victors. And so, we see a World War III situation occurring. After his peaceful ascension to power, the Antichrist will initiate what we might call World War III, Revelation 6, 3-4, against 3 of the 10 regional leaders who will be in power during this time. Death and destruction will be brought to the earth on a massive scale never before known. This battle may involve the nuclear exchange and will be followed by widespread inflation, famine, and disease, possibly due in part to nuclear fallout. Plagues will sweep across the land and death will come to a fourth of the world's population. All the while, the Antichrist will be carrying out his vengeance against those who have chosen to follow Christ instead of him. And the killing of millions of tribulation saints will escalate as the world sinks further and further into death and despair. Up until this point, the judgments that have come upon the earth during the tribulation are largely the result of man's endeavors. From here onward, however, the judgments will be acts of divine retribution. Revelation 6, 12-15 describes a massive earthquake so large that every mountain and island was moved out of its place. Apparently, there will be a series of massive volcanic eruptions as well, which will cause the sky to darken and the moon to appear red. Excuse me. The Apostle John also writes of meteor-like objects that come crashing down onto the earth. So incredible are these events that the earth's inhabitants will realize they are witnessing God's judgment right before their eyes. The kings of the earth, the great men, the rich men, the commanders, the mighty men, every slave, every free man, hid themselves in the caves and in the rocks of the mountains, and said to the mountains and rocks, "Fall on us and hide us from the face of him who sits on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb. For the great day of his wrath has come, and who is able to stand?" Excuse me, I'm sorry. Then hail, fire, and blood will rain down from the sky, causing a third of the earth's trees and grass to burn up. 2 more meteors will fall from the sky and kill a third of the sea life, destroy a third of the ships at sea, and poison a third of the earth's fresh water supply. Darkness will continue to envelop the land as the light from the sun and moon is dimmed by a third. Revelation chapter 9 describes a plague of locust-like creatures that descend upon the earth and have the ability to sting people. For 5 months, these creatures will torment but not kill unbelievers. It says, "Out of the smoke locusts came upon the earth, and to them was given power as the scorpions of the earth have power. They were commanded not to harm the grass of the earth, nor any green thing or any tree, but only those men who do not have the seal of God on their foreheads. And they were not given authority to kill them, but to torment them for 5 months. Their torment was like the torment of a scorpion when it strikes a man. In those days, men will seek death and will not find it. They will desire to die, and death will flee from them." Revelation 9. If that weren't enough, armies of demonic horsemen will be unleashed and kill another third of the world's population. And then it gets worse. As mentioned previously, halfway into the tribulation, the Antichrist will break his treaty with the nation of Israel, desecrate the rebuilt temple in Jerusalem, and kill the 2 witnesses who have been proclaiming the gospel. He will then seize total control over the monetary system of the world, requiring all to carry his mark, which in some way will consist of the number 666. This is the prophesied mark of the beast, and without it, no one will be able to buy or sell. It says he causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or their foreheads, and that no one may buy or sell except one who has the mark. Revelation 13. Even a few short years ago, such a prospect would have seemed inconceivable. But now, with computerized electronic financial transactions occurring on a worldwide scale, the ability to control and track the purchases of every human being is not only possible, but inevitable. Now, we must also consider this preparing for Armageddon. Meanwhile, as the tribulation progresses, the judgments of God will continue to afflict the ungodly. Loathsome sores will break out upon those who have the mark of the beast. The sea and remaining fresh water will be turned into blood. Heat from the sun will scorch the unrepentant, and darkness will envelop the kingdom of Antichrist. Then the Euphrates River will dry up, allowing the armies of the east to march unhindered to Israel to begin the battle of Armageddon. The bloodshed will reach unparalleled proportions. A tremendous earthquake will level the cities of the world, and hailstones weighing as much as 100 pounds will fall to the earth. Unfortunately, many of the ungodly will still not repent, despite the severity of these judgments. It says, there was a great earthquake, such a mighty and great earthquake as had not occurred since men were on the earth. Now the great city was divided into 3 parts, and the cities of the nations fell. And a great Babylon was remembered before God, to give her the cup of the winepress of the fierceness of his wrath. Then every island fled away, and the mountains were not found, and a great hail from heaven fell upon men, each hailstone about the weight of a talent. Men blasphemed God because of the plagues of the hail, since that plague was exceedingly great. Revelation 16. And with that, the judgments will draw to an end. The glorious appearing of Christ comes next. He will be in the air, accompanied by the armies of heaven, which consist of all those who are raptured to heaven. Revelation 19. Christ will then descend to earth in power and glory to win the battle of Armageddon. He will cast the beast, the Antichrist, and false prophet into the lake of fire and bind Satan in the abyss for 1,000 years. Then he will initiate his millennial reign on earth. The book of Revelation includes 3 sets of judgments, 6 seals, 6 trumpets, and 7 bowls. 19 total judgments that will unfold during the 7-year tribulation period. An overview of these judgments provides a helpful understanding of how these events will unfold. So let's look at the seal judgments in Revelation 6. Number 1, seal number 1, the rider on the white horse. Number 2, seal number 2, the rider on the red horse. Seal 3, the rider on the black horse. Seal 4, the rider on the pale horse. Seal 5, the martyred tribulation saints. Seal number 6, a great earthquake. Seal number 7, silence in heaven, beginning of trumpet judgments. Then we see the trumpet judgments talked about in Revelation 8 through 9. Trumpet number 1, 1/3 of the vegetation is destroyed. Trumpet number 2, 1/3 of the sea will be turned into blood. Trumpet number 3, 1/3 of the waters are contaminated. Trumpet number 4, 1/3 of the sky is darkened. Trumpet number 5, the first woe, locust-like creatures plague the earth. Trumpet number 6, the second woe, an army of 200 million men from the east will destroy 1/3 of all people. And lastly, trumpet number 7, which is the third woe, the beginning of the 7 bowl judgments. The bowl judgments are talked about in Revelation 16. Bowl number 1, terrible sores on those who follow the Antichrist. Bowl number 2 turns all the seas into blood. Bowl number 3, all the fresh water is turned into blood. Bowl number 4, there is terrible heat upon the earth. Bowl number 5, supernatural darkness on the earth. Bowl number 6, the Euphrates River dries up and an army march toward Armageddon. And bowl number 7, a massive moving of the earth's crust and 100-pound hailstorms. The prophecy of Daniel 9:27 tells us exactly what will start the tribulation. When he, the prince who is to come, shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week. It seems that the Antichrist will make a covenant with the nation of Israel to ensure the protection. However, he will break this covenant after 3.5 years. This does not mean that the treaty itself will be a 7-year treaty as opposed to one of indefinite length, but that it will be broken in the middle of the 70th week, 7 of Daniel 9:27. Since the 70th 7 refers to the 7 years of tribulation period, the reader understands that the treaty will be broken at the halfway point. But this does not mean the treaty itself is merely a 7-year treaty. Daniel's prophecy may relate to the rider on the white horse of Revelation 6 who comes in peace, for he has no arrows or implements of war in his hand. It appears that the Antichrist, will offer peace to the world and make a covenant with Israel, bringing peace to the Jewish people, who will then be able to rebuild their temple and reinstate their sacrifices again for 3.5 years. But in the middle of this week of years, he shall bring an end to sacrifice and offering, and on the wing of abominations shall be one who makes desolate. The Antichrist will break his covenant with the Jews in the middle of the tribulation, which agrees with Revelation 11 and 13, and will launch the greatest time of desolation in the history of the world. How long will it last? Until the consummation which is determined, it says. This is the same as the time of the end, meaning the end of the 70 weeks or 490 years, which is the same as the consummation of God's dealing with the Jews and the literal coming of Christ to set up his kingdom. In summary, then, the tribulation will begin when the covenant of peace between the coming new world government, headed by the Antichrist, and the nation of Israel. But halfway through the 7 years, the Antichrist will break the covenant and begin to persecute the nation of Israel and will become desolate. Many Christians think the rapture of the church begins the tribulation. But while it's possible the rapture and the signing of the covenant may take place very close together, the Bible is not specific on that subject. Still, there has never been a worldwide ruler who has made a covenant of peace with Israel and then broken that covenant after 3.5 years. This obviously means that the fulfillment of these events are still future.